Now that women are opting out of this work, it's affecting men because men have never seen it as valuable. They're having trouble like reconciling that. And instead of learning how to do it and, creating more value for women and sharing in that invisible labor, which by the way would make it visible because anything that men do is visible. Well, when men don't share in this labor, women have no choice but to either lose out on monetary income, because they're too busy like cooking dinner and doing the dishes and they're tired all the time and their brain is not thinking about work. It's thinking about how to manage resources while the man's brain is only thinking about work. Their choice is either to lose out on monetary income doing the stuff themselves or to outsource it, which you wouldn't have to do if the man would just pick up his fair share of slack. In fact, in that case, both of you would need to do less. You'd need to do about half the work. And that means you as the woman could make more money. You could perform more labor that would be considered visible. Get into sports. You could get into science. You could start publishing research. These are all things that men have always had the privilege to do because they weren't participating. They weren't taking on 100% of this labor. And all women are asking is, take on 50%, help me out. And men are like, no, because I don't know how to do this stuff and I don't consider it valuable and I'm just going to take the path of least resistance. And try to use the same threats on you that men were trying to use back in the day that, oh, I'm going to cut you off from access to resources. Well, nowadays women are like, fine, I'll go out and I'll get my own resources. Even if I have to outsource my own work, that doesn't matter. I don't need you. But instead of like stepping up and learning how to do any of this stuff or bringing other skills to the table that could be attractive to women like beauty or anything else, like we're now both equally bringing in resources, which means both people should be courting each other, or it means that resources should be the only thing that's brought into a relationship, not invisible labor. And then you figure out how to share the labor. But men don't want that. They want a woman to come with all this and they don't want to do any of this. So they just pretend they don't know how. They use weaponized incompetence because what they really want is for things to go back to the beginning. They want women to be cut off from resources, but still performing an outsized amount of labor for whatever amount of resources the man brings in. And the saddest thing is that they're showing their whole ass with this move, right? All you have to do is learn some other skills. And it's not even going to happen at your expense. Learning these skills will make you a better person. Women know this. That's why they exist on a level of maturity that most men can't even comprehend or imagine. That's why custody of a child automatically goes to the mother. Even in the Bible, it says, God said it's not good for a man to be alone. Women are full to the brim with all sorts of skills that men never had to learn because they monopolized access to resources. And they think by continuing to undervalue women's labor and contributions that they're going to get back to this place where they started. But that's not true because women now also have access to resources. And so there is no way forward without learning and bringing to the table the same things that women bring to the table. And men think they can like starve women out or wait them out or whatever. And it's like, no, honestly, access to resources was the most important part of this exchange. If y'all don't want to step up to the level where women are at, nobody's forcing you. Women can go out there and make their own money. The exchange is now different. It's not resources for services. It's resources and services for resources and services. We're now looking at companionship. We're not looking at one person benefiting from another. We're looking at both parties benefiting equally because they possess all the skills that it takes to both make and manage resources. Most women are not looking for that exchange anymore of you bring in the resources and I manage them because the managing part is typically a lot more work than the bringing it in part. And most women are like, I don't want to do that for free. And not only for free, but I don't want that work to be so devalued that you don't want to learn it, that you don't want to do any of it. And that is considered low in value simply because historically men have never had to perform it. It has value. Now that we have gone to outsource it, it is directly connected to value. It is directly connected to money. And women are tired of being ignored. And so they're simply taking all their shit and they're cutting off men's access to them. No more. There's no more of this dynamic. Women can now exist on their own. And this is why, by the way, this is why laws are being made again to restore the original dynamic. This is why women's freedoms are being taken away right now. This is why a woman's right to control her own body is being taken away. The men want to continue to live in this setup because it benefits them. And they will employ any tactic, including weaponized incompetence and learned helplessness, in order to keep it this way. Controlling women and being able to benefit disproportionately from their labor while giving them, frankly, nothing in return but your resources to manage as if they are her own. And then complain about, oh, she took stuff from me in the divorce, like all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, she's the reason that you had access to those resources. And mind you, all this has happened in the last 100 years, very slowly over time. So we are just now at this precipice of women being able to acknowledge and leverage their value, and the men are not doing well with it. They're opting out of dating, they're opting out of intimate relationships because of the learned helplessness, because they never had to learn to do anything other than be valued for making money. And that's why the patriarchy hurts men too. And that's why the only way for men to be happy within the patriarchy is to be actively oppressing women, because that's what makes their contributions seem worthwhile and valuable. Because once we start talking about women's contributions and how little men actually bring to the table, it's clear why this was the way. It's clear why this was the original setup. I think men can sense that they've lost their ground with this. They can sense it. The problem is that nobody ever taught them to do anything else. They never taught them that these other skills, these invisible and visible skills, might be important to them someday. And because they just don't know how to do any of it, because they never placed value on it, because they've never really tried it, they're just opting out. That's the learned helplessness, right? Like, women don't have that mindset. Women have a survival mindset, and men have a learned helplessness mindset that was given to them by the patriarchy that allowed them to be the only ones to have access to resources, which is fake survival. Fake. That's where you get the learned helplessness, okay? This is fake. Money is fake. Access to money is fake. Access to resources only through money is fake. This is how men took control and placed themselves above women by cutting off their access to resources through forced impregnation, through invisible labor, and through the taking away of basic inherent human rights. Of course, because men were only ever expected to bring one skill into an entire lifetime of a relationship with a woman and receive all of these skills in return, that feels like a normal and natural exchange to them, but it's not. It's not normal or natural. In nature, men have to attract women with more than just resources. They have to attract women with beauty, strength, confidence. They have to offer her something that she actually wants and that she doesn't have access to on her own. But that's where it comes from, because boys are only asked, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And girls are told, oh, well, when you get married and when you have kids, and then you are going to have to feed them, and no one's going to want to marry you if you can't cook, clean, and you're not beautiful. How are your communication skills? Well, you should have said this. Well, did you tell him? Well, did you show him? Well, did you this? Did you that? Did you? What were you wearing? What were you doing? Why were you there? Nobody asks men any of these things. That's the learned helplessness. And they can't even comprehend having to do difficult things like contribute to a relationship, having to do anything but the thing that they were trained and prepared to do their whole life, which is maybe go to work. But now that women can go to work too, they don't want to reciprocate, good charisma. They don't want to reciprocate emotional regulation. They don't want to reciprocate beauty. They don't want to reciprocate invisible labor. So that's the path of least resistance, and they want to stay on it. That's why they didn't come out when women's rights were taken away. It's because it pretty much benefits them for us to not have these rights, because then they can get us back into this trap of exchanging resources for services, which much outweigh the resources. And it's ultimately going to backfire so much more than it already has. In the meantime, if you're wondering why it is that men just don't seem worth your time or worth getting into a relationship with, this is why. It's because they only expect to ever bring one thing into the relationship. And other than that, they expect to take. And when they're challenged on that, they completely fall apart and would rather avoid the situation than to learn anything new, than to survive, anything. Anyway, do what you will. Please stay safe out there. I love you. Godspeed.